Good day and welcome to another edition of One-on-One with Swope Health. I am your host, Eric Wesson. Thanks so much for joining us today. We've got a great show, a very informative show planned for you today. And my guest today is Pastor Darren Edwards. He is the pastor of United Believers Church in South Kansas City and community advocate extraordinaire. Pastor Edwards, thanks so much for joining us.
E-Dub, it's good to be with you, my brother. Thanks for having me.
Okay. So, how did you wind up in Kansas City?
Thanks, man. In a weird sense, I heard just a call from God, man. You know, growing up in Texas, going to school in Texas, graduating from a prestigious university in Texas, I heard a call from God to say, hey, it's time to take an Abrahamic journey. I'm going to take you to a place you don't know and take you to a people that you have not met. But I'm going to do something great with you. And I heard that 20 years ago, but started out on Troost at 75th. Okay. On the west side of the street where you couldn't get the grant money to do much. And so I began to question God. I said, God, is this Kansas City is where you want me to be? He said, stay true to me and I'll take you even higher, man. And so I'm now in that place to where I'm walking in those promises that God has done for me.
Okay, so you got three homies here.
Yeah.
You got Clyde McQueen, Congressman Cleaver, and you. And y'all from what? Ouachita?
We from Waxahachie, Texas, man. And it's been crazy.
Population 14.
Yeah. Well, 11 now because we moved out. But my mama is still there in Waxahachie, Texas. My sister, is still there. And some of the Cleaver family is still there, man. Yeah. So it's been crazy to see what God can do with some country boys, in the Midwest.
And it's remarkable.
Yeah.
So a lot of things going on. You got a lot of exposure and attention with the program that you had with trying to do something with the police department. Making that connection between that and getting to the heart of the matter.
Yeah.
So did y'all ever really get to the heart of the matter?
No. We made some strides getting towards the heart, but I think it's going to take major surgery to get to the heart of the matter. And I learned a lot of lessons, Eric, launching that initiative, learning the city in a way. From a religious perspective, from a faith community perspective, I stepped out of the river into the ocean and got bit by the sharks, and learned some lessons now that I'm able now to navigate. So I don't dismiss the bites that I took because it's made me a wiser navigator now.
So you said you don't think that you all got to the heart of the matter. You're just in the chest somewhere.
Yeah.
But what would it take to get to that?
I think it takes more courageous people invited to the table to challenge the people who are sitting at those tables making decisions without understanding what's going on in neighborhoods and communities. The problem in Kansas City is that you have a lot of people sitting at the table who are making decisions about what's going on in communities that haven't lived in those communities, have not experienced those communities. They may work in those communities or visited those communities, but until you live there, my basic principle is people in the communities know the solutions for their communities. Why don't we resource them with what they need so that the problems that they already understand can be solved? It's a simple solution, but politically, because of all the defunding the police statements that went out there and back the blue, it's been tied up in a way where if it's a simple process, we can really see some change happen because we are, as you know, bursting out of the scenes with homicides now. And when we know that the answers are simple, that you get a group that's been living on 39th and Prospect, they can tell you what needs to happen at 39th and Prospect to clean up that community. And we need to fund that to let that happen.
Where you say a lot in the things that need to happen here, and we have the same people at the table. They're just happy to be there. But I know Malcolm X said, because I'm at the table with a plate and a knife and fork don't mean I got any food on my plate.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think of that when I hear people say, well, he's at the table or she's at the table. Okay, they're at the table doing what?
Yep. Yeah, yeah. I think it's a two-pronged, man. It's a two-pronged approach, you know. And going back to the old days with SNCC and those organizations, you had agitators in the street and you had negotiators at the table, but they were on the same game plan. Kansas City is different. You got agitators in the street who got their own agenda. You got negotiators at the table who got their own agenda,
and the two don't come together.
And the two don't come together, and we so siloed off. But it's going to take a police chief that brings the agitators and negotiators in the same room, because what we're to find is that we all want the same things. We may see it in different pathways, but we all basically want the same thing. We all want safe communities. We want our children to grow up healthy and mentally strong. We all want to see people with jobs and with equitable resources. There may be different ways how we see how to get to those points, but the perspectives are the same. So what we really need to do is get the agitators and what we call the negotiators in the same room together, and let's hash it out. That's how you build a vision.
So do you think we have the leadership that can make that happen and can do that?
I think we have the leadership now that can at least bring us all to the table. And I only say that, Eric, because I've seen it. I've been in a meeting that wasn't called by our chief of police, it was called by the FBI. And the FBI was able to pull together the agitators, the civil rights groups, and the negotiators in the faith communities, and bring us all into a room and talk about, hey, we got a problem. You know, and we need, but it took the federal government, you know, to make that happen. We need a local perspective. We need either the mayor, the Jackson County prosecutor, or the police, the chief police, and say, hey, let's put us all up in this room and let's just hash this thing out. You know, we got to holler and scream. We need to, you know, decide on 2 or 3 things. Let's decide on 2 or 3 things. We're not going to agree on 10, but if we can get 2 or 3 and say that we're all working together, we can make some major movements in this community.
So do you think that those 3 groups are all on the same page?
I think they can be. I don't think we are. We all want to see death in our communities diminish.
Right.
Man, we all want to see Big Mama and Pawpaw get a good night's sleep, you know, and not be rattled with gunfire, you know, and not saying after living in a community 50 years, I want to move, but I don't have the resources and the money. Where am I going to go? I mean, so we all feel that pain, you know, and honestly, we can pray and honestly, we can think, but we know it's going to take resources to help some of these movements to happen, some of these things to occur. And, you know, let's just call it what it is. When you think about the trifecta downtown, there's billions of dollars sitting there, but there's no help and hope in those communities.
So how do you think it got like this?
Man, the system and the structure from the beginning, you know. I mean, I'm a faith community. You know, a tree by the fruit it bears. You got to go to the root. The root, when it was planted in a systematic way that oppressed and marginalized people. You know, we can cut the limbs all day long. They're not going to let you get to the root. The root is the culture and the systematic racism that exists. And that's where we got to get to. We got to inject the root, you know, and change it from the core so that we can begin to see fruit that looks different than what we've seen.
So let's go to the root.
Yeah.
Do you think that if white males and white females in rural Missouri were getting killed at the rate that they are in urban cities in Kansas City and St. Louis, do you think Missouri lawmakers would be doing something about gun control?
Well, let's just flip it, bro, because we've seen it before. we saw crack in the 80s and fentanyl in the 2000s. Look how quickly legislation went into place for fentanyl addiction. That we never heard a thing when it was crack in the hood. Right. You know, it is what it is.
Just,
you know,
tougher crime laws.
Yeah.
That's all we heard.
That's all we heard. But now you got remedies, you got health agencies mobilizing, being resources with millions and millions of dollars to step in, help with a fentanyl crisis that we never saw with a crack epidemic. We never saw that happen. And so I take the same thing as it relates to gun reform. I think the same thing needs to, I hate to say needs to happen because it almost like, you know, hurt somebody. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is when we look at gun reform, I am of the belief like January the 6th, the insurrection. Mm-hmm. We all know that if that was African American people storming that Capitol, I would still be preaching funerals today, Eric, over what took place there. It's just a fact. I think we've got to look at how does this affect. I always think about the movie, and the name escapes me right now, where the attorney says to the jury, now, if this young girl was a white girl, how would you vote? How would you vote? And that one line changed that whole rural demographic jury to set that black man free. Samuel L. Jackson was in that movie.
Right. I know which one you're talking about.
And I think about it that way. So the coloring of America is an issue that nobody wants to talk about, but we need to talk about.
But why don't we want to talk about it? Why is it a taboo subject?
Because I have a friend. We went to school together, so we're in our 50s. That said this to me. He said, "Darren, the problem is that my generation of people and older generations of my people are being challenged by our children and grandchildren on this issue of race at the dinner table." Mm-hmm. He said that's what's happening. He said it's not what's happening in the political world. It's not what's happening in the religious world. Our grandchildren and children are calling us to the carpet. And so the only way to flip that is that let's get rid of the books. Mm-hmm. Let's get rid of let's demonize CRT. Mm-hmm. So this next generation of children come on won't even know the atrocities that happen in America. And so it's the children, the grandchildren in little white homes that are saying, hey, you guys talking about loving thy neighbor, but what did y'all do about this? Right. And so it's changing stuff.
Right. But will it ever change? I guess we have to put a question mark there for the next chapter, because it's a part of history. And when you look at things, especially in Florida, and this guy's probably going to be one of the front runners for president. One of the things that he's doing, gun control. Everybody can have a gun down in Florida.
Oh, yeah, man.
Now you don't want to talk about what happened in American history. Everything was hunky-dory, peachy, creamy, but that's not America. Yeah. That's not what happened. That's not the foundation that was built on. So if we erase all of that, then everybody, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? And to them, it's a good thing.
Well, if you never knew that there was a civil war, then why can't we have another one? If you never knew one ever existed, then so when you have another one, then it releases you from the shame. It releases you from the guilt. So you can have another one. I think we're on a very, very trajectory of trouble in America, because once you erase the shame and the guilt of what you had in the past, it gives you the opportunity to have another one in the present.
So let's shift a little bit. We are at almost a record number of homicides for this time of the year for the past 5 years. Is there a solution in the horizon?
Man, brother, you had some pointed questions, man. I've had as most people know who watch this podcast know that I have a growing relationship with Chief Stacey Graves, and I've mentioned to the chief many times. I said, "Hey, your honeymoon is running out, and you've got to release your vision for this city. I get it. You're running here, there, everywhere. You're front facing the community. You're part of these community groups. People are talked out. People are dying in the streets, and we've got to have some initiatives. We got to have some thought. We have to have a vision that the city can rally around, but to this date has yet to be released. And I'm of the belief in the faith community, the Bible says that when you have a vision, people are running to it. Well, what are we running to when there's no vision? We're running in and everywhere because we have nothing to rally around. And so I think we're waiting on the police chief to tell us her thoughts on how to get this done. Don't be afraid to release your vision. Your vision is your vision. People are going to critique whatever they're going to critique, but at least give us the vision. That's my hope. And to this point, it has not been released. And I've been prodding, I've been nodding, I've been trying to encourage. But now at this record number, we are past 2020, right, which is the most deadliest year now. And I just believe once we get a vision and resource that vision, which I think is community partnerships, I think we can begin to slow it down. because right now I think we're on the verge of over 200. And I hate to look at this podcast in hindsight in December and say, wow, Eric and Darren were right, because we didn't get this in place.
You know, one of the things that we've got coming up is the city in May will be releasing an RFP. They're going to put $30 million over 5 years, or $6 million a year in violence prevention programs. Do you think that'll help?
Again, I go back to what I said, is that you have people who are making decisions at the table who haven't lived in those communities. And so even a doctor, when you walk into a doctor's office, they ask you, where does it hurt? Now, this person has all the credentials to help me, but the first question is mine. I got to own it. I got to tell this doctor who specializes where I'm hurting.
Right.
He cannot look at me and tell where I'm hurting. That's the problem with this system, is you got people who trying to tell me where I hurt. No, let me tell you where I hurt, and you put in the dollars and the practice and the education to deal with the hurt that I'm experiencing.
I went to the hearings when they were determining what they were going to do, and I listened to the testimony. But I heard the same people up there with the same testimonies that I've heard for at least the last 15 years.
Yeah.
So is that one of the problems, that we keep doing the same thing the same way and expecting different results? Or if we fund these programs that we've been funding for decades, what's going to be a different outcome?
Well, I'm not going to be a part of any more after homicide, a prayer walk, a balloon release, given these pharisaical statements at crime scenes. We need prevention techniques. We need dollars in communities. We need neighborhood associations. That's where it is.
Right,
honestly.
right.
You know, you got these neighborhood association leaders, man, they know where the criminals are, they know where the problem is, and they know how to help children. And we running all the way around them, trying to resource long-time resource thinkers, I'll say it that way, who haven't thought out a solution yet. And you know I danced around that one.
You sure did. You sure did.
But I just think there's a new crop, and what I'm afraid of with this $6 million over 5 years is that you're going to resource thinkers who haven't thought out a solution in 30 or 40 years, and so we've got to come up with something different. Some people profit off of problems.
Right.
The only reason why they exist is because of the problem. So if you eliminate the problem, they cease to have a voice. And that's what I see happening in Kansas City, is that, hey, as long as that's a problem, they're gonna fund me. But as soon as you start eradicating that problem, then I cease to exist.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's tragically, that's been kind of a statement or a mindset that people have, but don't say anything about for a while. You're listening to One-on-One with Swope Health. I am your host, Eric Wesson. I'm joined today by Pastor Darren Edwards, and we're just having a coffee table conversation today. So another thing that's on the horizon in Kansas City is affordable housing.
Yeah.
So how is that looking with your members and where your church is? Okay, first of all, this is what I want to know. What in the world is affordable housing?
I think we get housing. Let's define what's affordable.
Exactly.
Because again, you got people downtown trying to tell the people in town what you can afford. I mean, this is some crazy concepts that go on. And so you come up with affordable housing. If affordable housing is $300,000, that's not affordable. For the people who you're trying to get affordable housing for. And so I think it's going to take partnerships, honestly, bro, with faith communities and faith communities stepping up. And I think my cry and my prayers for faith communities, because COVID has hurt faith communities. I think in your church, my church, churches all around the city, we're decreased attendance, and I don't know if we'll ever get back to those numbers.
Right.
But one of the things we've got to think about is how to partner with the city to build affordable housing that we understand that our congregants can afford.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that look like? So maybe we put another, my wife told me it's an adverb. So maybe we need to look at quality affordable housing, you know, and do something that way that is still affordable, that's quality, but is at a level to where we know our people can afford it.
And you know what's interesting in that, because I've got to drill down a little bit deeper. When I grew up in church, I still go, of course, people around the church lived in the neighborhood that went to church there. But now you have your congregants live in Blue Springs, Lee Summit, Independence. They're all over the place. So when you talk about what's affordable for your congregants, which group of congregants are you talking about?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think so, because Kansas City is an aging community, an aging population, and my generation, your generation, Eric, is a bit wealthier than I think generations may follow us. And so maybe we look at building senior housing. You know, man, hey, my house right now on 3 levels. Mm-hmm. I ain't trying to do that, brother, in the next 10, 20 years. You know, give me a 1 level, you know what I'm saying? Give me a little balcony. I can look out and see the city and I'm good. You know, and I think we've got to think about, since it's projected that we can live well into our 80s, even to our 90s, that we can build affordable housing that is senior, that's quality, that which we groove with, and build these quality livings where it's on 1 level that looks good, that feels good, it's not too much. Mm-hmm. You know, for us, that's affordable, that we can live off of our retirement. Mm-hmm. And that can happen when churches partner whatever parcels of land that they have to build those type of complexes. I mean, I believe that's where the future is.
But you know, we're growing up though, in years past, and I guess maybe because HUD is different now, churches had CDC, so they built housing developments, they built senior housing. Why aren't we doing that anymore?
I think it's on the horizon. I think it's coming back.
It's coming back.
I really do. I really think it's coming back, but it's not coming back because I'm not trying to racialize a point. Mm-hmm. But I think it's coming back not because it's needed in Black and brown communities, but it's needed in white suburbia. Mm-hmm. White suburbia needs affordable housing too. Mm-hmm. And so it's moving there, which it's been moving there, which means it's going to eventually come to Black and brown communities as well. And so you're seeing it on that end. I'm talking from a faith community perspective because it's already been gentrified even in cities. Mm-hmm. And so I think we'll be able to see more, not necessarily CDCs. I think the CDC concept is gone.
Okay.
But I think you're going to see private sector partnering with faith communities to help build many of these projects that are on the scene.
But do you think that'll wind up with being affordable? Because if you look at building a standard 2-bedroom house now or 3-bedroom house is like $200,000 because of the square footage. And have you bought a 2x4 lately?
No, I haven't, but I've heard.
Oh my goodness. I was like, well, you want my lunch money for a month for this board. And so building those houses, new houses, and because we always hear about we need new housing is not going to create an affordable market.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, and maybe it's slow growth. Someone was just telling me the other day that there's a waiting list to get in many of these affordable houses across our city, and even if we built in the concepts where 20% of whatever you build is truly that number grows even more because you get in 20% of already of a waiting list, which means you got to build something else, and 20% to already of a waiting list. You know, you got people dying in the streets, brother. That's what I'm saying. You got homeless and houseless that's dying in the streets because we haven't solved the issue of what affordability is. So
my last one, and then when we gonna wrap up, and you brought it up, houseless situation and homeless. Yeah. So we got the NFL draft coming here in Kansas City in the next couple of weeks, and then they've got the soccer World Cup things coming, but we still have a homeless problem, and they said they're going to eradicate it in 5 years. True or false?
No, they're going to show you 3 miles north, south, east, and west of Union Station. You already can't get downtown now, and we're 3 or 4 weeks out from this event. They're going to show you what they normally show you. They're going to show you the. It's like when I went. I'll leave the country nameless. As long as you were at the resort, it was beautiful. Mm-hmm. But if you walked off the resort and went across the street, you saw the real deal.
Okay.
I think that's what we're seeing. They're going to resort Kansas City. They're going to make it look real resortful. So to the eyes that are peering in across the world to the NFL draft, woo, Kansas City is just out of sight. My goodness, God, look at all of this.
Super Bowl champions.
Draft coming. FIFA got all these stadiums coming in. Women's soccer, Sporting KC doing that thing. But, man, if you take 3 steps to the left from where they moved the boundary, you're going to see homeless camps and houseless communities. And with all these billions of dollars that we have coming in, and to say that we can't build something, even if it's not sustainable now, but we can build something to get our brothers and sisters off the streets, to help them to get into some type of vehicle, to help them to get back on their feet. Man, everybody that's housed and homeless, they want to restart. They just don't know how to get a restart. Mm-hmm. They want to do better. They just don't know how to do better.
Right.
If you spend some time talking to them, they're not to be pushed aside. They just want a helping hand. And so we got to figure it out. And I think with all these billions of dollars, with all these millionaires coming into town, you're trying to tell me somebody can't write a grant, somebody can't leave some money and say, hey, clean this up. Because I stepped 4 or 5 steps from where y'all stopped broadcasting, and I saw a problem that needs to be eradicated. I believe that's how it happens, brother.
Pastor Edwards, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for being here.
All right, I appreciate it. And as always, to our podcast audience, I have the greatest audience in the world. Till next week, remember, tough times don't last, tough people do. Until next time, peace.